Hello traders, it's Douglas here, and today we got a good one. We're going to go to an in-depth review of the Bookmap platform. Now this is my favorite trading platform, and hopefully by the end of this video you will understand why. It gives you a much deeper understanding of what is happening in the market. It can give you advanced notices of setups. It's really quite brilliant, but it's not going to do the trading for you. So don't have unrealistic expectations. So with that in mind, let's get to it. If you've never seen Bookmap before, this might look like you're looking at the Matrix. So to understand Bookmap, the first thing we need to understand are candlestick charts, all right? This is what most people use. They use candlestick charts. So let's go over here, and we're going to be looking mostly at the ES today on April 23rd. Now what I'm going to play you in Bookmap is a replay of April 23rd. All right, so if we're looking at candlesticks, this one is a 15-minute candlestick chart. Candlesticks show you where price opened and where price closed over a certain period of time, period of volume, period of ticks, whatever it is that you set up. And that's all it shows you. It just shows you where price has been and where it currently is. All right. So if you think about it, people that are setting up their trades based on candlestick patterns or candlestick shapes are missing something very important. They're missing that the market is not driven by candlestick patterns or shapes. The market's driven by people. It's driven by buyers and sellers, supply and demand, and all of that is driven by other people, other traders. So if you are looking at a candlestick pattern on your 5-minute chart, well, that pattern's gonna look different on a 1-minute chart. It's going to look different on a 15-minute chart. It's going to look different on a volume chart, on a tick chart, so on and so forth. So why would you think that your chosen time frame is the magical time frame that's showing you the correct pattern? All right, furthermore, if you're looking at standard stuff like support and resistance, that's all you know. You know that price had been here once, price had been here twice, so price might be here a third time. Oh, it just went on through you. And we all know that support and resistance aren't guaranteed. You know, they're just probabilities trying to help us get a better edge with our trading. The problem is that we don't know why they work or why they fail after the fact. Okay, now Bookmap can show you that. It can show you why it worked out or why it failed. All right, so in this instance, you were looking for this resistance area. It broke through. You have no idea why it broke through and then reversed up here. Okay, now you can have theories. You know, you can say that, well, it broke through to take out my stops and then reversed and started going back down in the direction I thought it would. Or you can do something like put up indicators like a MACD or something like that and say, well, the market at this point was overbought according to the MACD. But I'm guessing that you don't know where it was telling you it was overbought. You know, the MACD was probably up somewhere in here, and then it kept going up, and then it started going down. You know, if you've used these indicators, you know what I mean. Precision is not the name of the game when you're talking about indicators and candlestick charts or trend lines or whatever it is. So now that I've gone in that rant, let's go over to Bookmap to find out why exactly, and I mean precisely why, this market turned around at 9:45. And yes, it can be done with Bookmap. So if we pull up the Bookmap chart, the first thing I want to show you is this oil chart, because the oil chart is just got a clear setup of certain Bookmap features. So these blue bubbles are cumulative buy bubbles. So this is saying that there are more buyers than sellers over that period of time. The bigger the bubble, the more dominant, the more volume of buyers there were. All right. Likewise, on the seller end, the sellers are just red, but same situation. If the bubble's red, there's more sellers. If the bubble's big, there are even more sellers than if the bubble is small. All right. Now these highlighted areas, 1, 2, 3, these highlighted areas are limit sellers in this situation since they're above price. If they're below price, they're limit buyers. You can see that over here, blue is the buyers, red are the sellers. They are the limit orders in the book. So these guys are waiting around to trade. They've got their orders in advance. They're waiting for price to come to them, or they're trying to drive price perhaps. You know, we don't know their intentions, but they're waiting in the book. And then these bubbles, of course, these are the ones that execute. These are like the market orders that execute against the limit orders. I hope that makes sense, okay? So if you were looking at oil and you'd say, well, why did price come up to this area? Well, there was a lot of people, a lot of sellers that wanted to play, all right? There was a lot of people that wanted to play in the market. Price went up and said, hey, there's a lot of supply up here. There's a lot of supply. Let's go up, let's test that supply and see what happens. And of course, supply also can act as resistance. So even though price broke through these first two levels, it didn't do it right away. It kind of bounced around a little bit. It took some time to get enough buyers to get through those sellers. And then when it gets up to this final one, it bounces off again, as you would suspect. Now it might break through and go on through. I never claim the Bookmap is going to make you Nostradamus. I never claim that you're going to be 100% trader. All I claim is that your edge will be greater. All right, keep that in mind. Just your edge will be greater. So let's go over to the ES so we can look at this 945 situation. So at the ES, 945, the ES not nearly as clear. That's why I was showing you that oil chart first, okay? Now you can see that there were some big buyers driving price up. For instance, at the open, if you sold at the open back in that resistance area that I was originally talking about, and you want to know what happened, why did that resistance break? Well, there was a huge amount of buyers here. You can come back in Bookmap and you can see all these blue bubbles, man. I sold in the face of all that buying, all right? So you know what happened to you, and that can greatly help you out, just knowing why you lost or won, all right? Trend line's not gonna show you why it happened. You're just gonna say, well, it held or it didn't hold, right? That doesn't tell you enough. Okay, so we come over here to 945, and what you would see if we watch the rest of this chart is that these blue bubbles start turning red and red and red, and then price goes down. All right, now the problem with that is that it can happen on a dime. If you come back here, we had all these blue buyers, so you jump in blue, and then all of a sudden the red buyer, the red sellers come in, and you say, well, that didn't help me, because it changed on a dime. Oh, buyers back in, seller, buyers, and then enough buyers, and it starts going up. So sometimes in the ES especially, the levels aren't clear, but this is kind of the brilliance of Bookmap, is we're not limited to just the futures market. We can get into the stock market. We can get into ETFs. And this is kind of a secret that most people don't talk about. Okay. Now this is an extra feature with Bookmap. It's an additional cost. You have to get what's called a DX feed. All right. So that's about $50 a month, something like that. But if you buy that, then you can get into stocks and ETFs, okay? And one huge point to note is if you do get Bookmap, you have to use rhythmic data. Now you can use something like CQG or something like that, but that will only give you 10 levels of data in the order book. 10 levels is nothing, okay? So you would only see from like here to here. You would basically be driving blind still. It would be completely worthless to have Bookmap if you're using CQG or a different data provider. If you use Rhythmic, it gives you full depth. You can see all the levels in the market. All right, so that's huge. That's a huge important thing. Make sure you have Rhythmic data. All right, so like I said, at 945, we don't know much of what's happening in the futures market, but that's okay because the ES is the S&P 500 basically, right? We're tracking the S&P 500. What else tracks that? The SPY, the SPY ETF. Now the SPY is huge compared to the futures market. There's much more volume done on a daily basis in the SPY than there are in the ES. So the SPY can drive the market in a way that I don't think the futures market can. It can give you advanced notices that sometimes the futures market doesn't give you. So if we go over to the SPY, you see this level, it's not greatly highlighted, but let's clear out some of the other guys. If you see this level here of traders that have been sellers, that have been sitting in the book all morning long, just waiting to trade, all right, you know in advance that when the SPY gets to this level, we're going to have some sort of action happen, okay? This is where the action is going to happen. These guys could get beat and the market could go up, or if you're playing like a resistance point or reversal point, something like that, you can say, I need to look out here. I definitely don't want to buy into this before I see what happens, because I could get burned. The market could turn around on a dime on me. And if you look lower here at 9 o'clock, you know exactly what happened at 9 o'clock. All right, price comes down. We saw this on the ES. There was that moment of sellers that took control, but then they stopped and then the buyers reversed and took control. Why? Okay, why? Because a bunch of limit buyers came in to lift the market. That's what this highlighted area is. All right, so price comes down, you know, buyers come in, drops back down, tests that area of limit buyers. You got this sell bubble that tries to sell into it. There's not enough sellers to push the market down. Buy bubbles come back in. They lift the market. These buyers down here were enough of a wall to push price up towards these sellers. Now here's the tricky part. Those buyers might have been these sellers up top. They might have been pushing price up on purpose into their sell orders. All right, so they can get filled, because bigger players have to manipulate the market in certain ways to get their bigger orders filled from us smaller retail traders. That's what makes it so difficult for us, okay? But that's why you need Bookmap. So we drive the market up into these sellers, and then if we come over to Qs, it can get complicated, right? So Qs are the NASDAQ, but the NASDAQ also tracks fairly well with the ES. So we come over to the Qs, not quite as well as the SPY. The SPY is almost perfect with the ES, okay? Now the NASDAQ can go a little, because it's a different market, you know, they can go off track a little bit, but for the most part, 95% of the time, they're pretty much together. Let's go over to the Qs. The Qs are a lot clearer. Look at these heavy areas of volume, okay? So price is coming right up into those areas of heavy sell volume. We have a heavy area of buy volume coming in too. Okay, so you don't know who's going to win at this point in time, but now you know there is a lot of interest here. All right, traders are really interested in playing the game at this level. So since the SPY is the one that's really interesting right here, we're going to play this out at multiple times speed, so we don't have to sit here all day. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty, the bells and whistles of Bookmap, all right? But you just have to see this play out before you can understand the importance of what we're looking at. So you knew, at least from the open, past 9:30, 9:45, so you've got an hour and 15 minutes at least to plan ahead that this is an important level to play. What kind of advantage is that? All right, and you don't have to guess that maybe this resistance area, because we saw on the candlestick chart, you know, there's certain resistance areas. You don't have to guess in advance that maybe this will be an area of interest. You know that it will be an area of interest. Major edge, major edge. So what does price do? They drive them up into those sellers. Buys right into those sellers, but they're too strong, pushes them down. We saw on the candlestick chart that it nosedive, just completely reverses on a dime and just goes down, okay? So if we come back, of course, that's a 15-minute chart, so it's going to take a minute for this to play out. So if we come back to the Qs, I mean, look at that. So we saw there was that area of buyers. It looked bigger on the chart earlier. But we saw there was that area of buyers. We didn't know who was going to win. Well, what happens when those buyers disappear? When those buyers disappear and then more sellers come in, and then more sellers come in, what do you think is going to happen here? You know, You're not guaranteed. You're not guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed, but more sellers come in, more sellers come in, more sellers come in. Buyers leave, red dots all over the place. What are your odds at this point in time? You can go big here, right? If you lose, you lose. There's nothing you can do about it. If the market changes on a dime and takes you out, it's going to happen. But this gives you so much conviction that yes, indeed, we need to go lower here. Even when we came up, all we had was big sellers. It's absolutely brilliant. If you don't have Bookmap, I highly suggest that you go for it. Just for fun, let's see what happened in the CL over that time frame. CL was a little more difficult. And so this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. You're not going to be Nostradamus. So it comes through. You had all these sellers. Price had been moving up all day. There's a good term, don't step in front of a freight train. So price is moving up all day, eats through all these sellers. Now here's the tricky part in the market. Sometimes those sellers want to get filled, right? They want to get filled. So it comes through, takes a minute. Of course, even though we beat these sellers and then beat these sellers, it takes a minute. Price bounces around. So now you know why you're ranging out for a minute. Because price is bouncing around, trying to eat through those sellers. It takes a moment. You can't just do it right away. Now they find the punch to get through. They meet another level of sellers, bounce around, find the punch to get through. But now all the sellers are filled at that point in time. All the sellers are filled. So the seller's business up here is done. And now the market might start reversing and going for these buyers down here. Okay, so the market is tricky. I warned you in advance that you will not be Nostradamus, but you know what happened. All right, you know what happened. The sellers wanted to get filled. They got filled. Once they were done with business, buyers are down here. Maybe they want to get filled. Maybe that's where price goes now. Okay, got it. Now, let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's get into the details. So there is global option for Bookmap. That's the basic Bookmap option. And then there's global plus, which adds some additional features. So we're going to get into the global options first. So like I said, these bubbles are the cumulative buyers and sellers. Now the default in Bookmap is these blue bubbles are actually going to be green. I am colorblind and it's harsh on my eyes separating the green from the red. So I changed them blue. All right, I changed them blue, and that option is in here. That is the API settings, color settings. So there you go. You've got all these color settings that you can just change. You've got this little dropper that you can pick colors off the chart to change it automatically. So that's your color settings. We're not going to deal with much of those kind of details. I just wanted to show you that real quick. We're going to get into the major options. So we're going to go over here. This little guy is the studies configuration. All right. This is the important stuff. So first things first, we'll start with the candlesticks. So if you love your candlesticks, which is fine, you can put them on the chart. And you can change, 1 minute interval, 5 minute interval, whatever you want to do. You can throw that on the chart. And that's what it looks like. So you can play with the bubbles and the candles at the same time. You can have these bubbles removed. You can just play with the candles and the heat map. Whatever you want to do, that option is available for you. This is on the global, okay? We're covering global stuff first. So that's the candlesticks. Correlation tracker, I'm not going to go over that one. That'll lay a little line chart, like say you wanted to map the SPY over the top of the Qs to see if they're correlating together. It'll do a little line like that, but I have no interest in that, so we're not going to cover that. Cumulative volume dots, we've been talking about that. These are the, this is the cumulative volume delta, all right? Cumulative volume delta. So you can add sort of different parameters if you want to track just trades of certain sizes. If you want to track the overall volume delta, you can hit this little plus button. So usually it's just the CVD, but I hit the plus button. I put only volume of 10 and above, and then I named it big so I could track that separately. All right, so if we go down here, we'll have to clear up all this mess. So right now you can see this little guy. This is the CVD, and this is the one I made big. And so the CVD is just tracking, this is the cumulative volume delta over time. All right, this is the sum total, so it keeps adding and subtracting from itself of the buyers over time, and the bigger buyers, the one that I made custom. And you can see that as the price was going up, of course, the cumulative volume delta is moving up with it. And as price starts to go down, cumulative volume delta starts to go down. Now, the cumulative volume delta, the reason why you might want to use this is a lot of times it can give you sort of an advanced notice. It's not perfect. It's very hit or miss, but you can see that we kind of ranged out here. You know, we kind of went sideways. I mean, it went down a little bit and came up, but it's basically sideways, but the volume delta's not. The volume delta's been dropping. So if your conviction here is that these sellers wanted to get filled and now they want to push down into the buyers, the volume delta can give you a little bit of conviction on that because it's been moving down. So you know that sellers are actually in control, even though it might be a little bit more difficult to see that up here since price hasn't really moved. All right, so that's the volume delta. So let's get rid of the volume delta. Let's go to the VWAP. All right, so the VWAP, volume weighted average price. Now, to be honest, I don't like the VWAP in Bookmap because it only starts from when you start the session. So when you open up Bookmap, it's the VWAP's going to start from where you open it at. Now that works on the DX feed because the DX feed gives you historical data. In the past, it would give you like 24 hours of historical data. So the VWAP will start from the beginning of the day, which is the way the VWAP should start. So I will use it on the ETFs, but on futures, unless you have run the program overnight and have collected all that overnight data, the VWAP is going to be not the other VWAP that everybody else is looking at. Like if you pulled it up on NinjaTrader, if you pull the VWAP up on TradingView, it's going to have it from the beginning of the actual trading session, not from when you open the chart. Make sense? Okay, so that's why I don't use the VWAP on the futures in Bookmap, but I do use it on the ETFs because I like to track sort of where price is in relation to the VWAP. Volume bars. Don't use these either, but if you want to see volume bars, they're down here at the bottom. You can drag this line up to make the volume bars easier to see or get them out of your way, whatever you want to do. But everybody's familiar with volume bars, so I'm not going to spend much time on that, but that, of course, is the volume that's happening. But since you can see that in these blue bubbles, I think it's completely redundant, so I always remove the volume bars. Now we come to volume dots. These are the buy and sell bubbles that we've been talking about, the volume dots. So now it used to be in the past that all we could see was the total volume. And to me, that's almost worthless. Okay, so it tries to give you these little sort of pie charts of, if there was more buyers or sellers. It does give you these bigger bubbles, which let you know that more volume happened in an area, and I think that knowing that is helpful, but it's very hard to see who is in control here. So when they came out, and I don't think it was that long ago, but when they came out with the delta and changed those bubbles, that's so much cleaner, so much better. So it's quite a brilliant little upgrade they made there. You can change the size of the bubbles with this. You can make the bubbles bigger or smaller on your chart. You can change, of course, the transparency of the bubble. Now this is the clustering. This is important. I usually use smart clustering. So smart clustering will group them together based on the time crunch that you've created with the map. Okay, so real quick, this is the bubble size. So like if you wanted to really make them big or you want them out of your way, you can just drag that around. So if the smart clustering is going to cluster these based on the amount of space it has. So if we scrunch up Bookmap, they will start clustering more together. If we zoom in like that, it'll space them more out apart. So it'll see all these bubbles when we start scrunching them up, they will start kind of building on themselves and creating those more condensed bubbles that we saw earlier. Okay, hope that's clear. Didn't explain that as well as I wanted, but you can change the minimum displayed volume, so you can change the amount if you only want to see bubbles of a certain cumulative size. I think things get a little bit tricky when you start messing with that one, so I don't. You can change it by time, so you can change the bubbles only to show up for every 1 minute interval. You can change it so the bubbles only show up for every 10-minute interval and say, well, over 10 minutes, who was in control here? Over 10 minutes, sellers, 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 so maybe we're going down. Perhaps. All right, so that is time. You can do it by volume. The volume one seems to be kind of messy, so I won't skip that one, or I will skip that one. So that is the clustering of the dots. I recommend just going with the smart clustering and absolutely the delta clustering. Have to have the delta clustering. So now here, let's go into the most important feature, is the heat map. So the heat map is the liquidity that's showing up on the limit orders, the buy and sell. So you can change the heat map and say, oh, I'd rather have this color. I prefer the red in there for the fire. Oh, you can see the original green bubbles that I was talking about now, because I haven't changed the color on this heat map version. Back in the day, everything used to be black and white. So you can do it black and white if you want. I just use the default one. That's fine with me. Those colors are pleasing to my eye, so that's what I use there. You can change the contrast so you can get a little bit more detail. This will highlight just the bigger areas. If you want a lot more detail, you can go back here, and then it starts kind of blurring it out, because there are definitely orders here, you can see. Right, so there are orders there, so now it's giving you all of those orders in the color. But if you just want the bigger orders, you go this way, and then it eliminates some of those smaller guys, makes it a little bit more pleasing to the eye. I kind of like to have a happy medium, a happy balance. Let's go back to the heat map. Again, these are just more ways to adjust what you're seeing there. The advanced color map is the same thing. That's going to adjust how those colors are showing up to you, if you're getting more detail or less detail. Now, right now it's on auto, so it kind of auto clusters the volume. That's the best way I can say it. And so it's called smoothing, and I'll let you see exactly what that looks like so this is when the details of the heat map are only by exact price. You can see it gets really messy. It's hard to see that there was more volume over here. So I'm sure somebody could play with that and make some use of it. But to me, that's just mind blowing. Now, manual, you can kind of adjust just how much. Right now we've smoothed it out too much. Keep picking the wrong thing. Right, and then if we come back here, we start getting back into that messy area. So that'll give you sort of an exact amount of smoothing that you would like to see. Auto is probably the best way to go. Just use auto. Okay, just use auto. All right, so that covers everything for the global option. Now, Global Plus, I'm going to cover the most important feature first. Global Plus gives you the ability to trade from Bookmap. Now, I didn't have this for a long time because I didn't like any of the other features of Global Plus, and I'll get into those in a minute. But then I decided I do actually want to trade straight from Bookmap. So that's this little guy. You click him, it brings up your trade panel. It gives you a little bit of protection, so we turn it on so I can trade straight from the chart. This area here, see where that dollar sign comes up? That area here, if you click in that area now, it will make a trade for you, okay? And if we go down, this would be your details of your account, how much you've won on the day. You can change the settings to add in your total account balance, your volume, whatever you want to see here for your details, you can do. You can make your orders market or limit. You can choose how many contracts you want. You can come down here, you can flatten out. This will cancel all your orders at once. You can also do the same thing with cancel all here. This will show you your orders that are waiting in the book. And then down here you can do a little bracket, so when your order executes, it'll automatically put in a target price and a stop loss. Now the problem, one big disadvantage of Bookmap versus something like NinjaTrader is it doesn't have multiple target options. So if you wanted to do, like, say 2 contracts or 10 contracts and have 3 different targets, maybe different stop losses, you can set that up fairly easily in NinjaTrader, but not in Bookmap. Bookmap, the only way to have multiple target points is to actually make separate orders. So if you wanted to use 2 contracts, we'll keep it easy, and you want 2 different target points, you would have to actually hit the button twice. You would want to set your size to 1 and then buy or sell twice to make 2 orders, so you could have 2 separate targets. Okay, so that is cumbersome, but most of us are small traders and we're not going to have to deal with too much of that. 1 or 2 contracts, it's easy enough to hit the button once or twice. So let's set this to regular speed. Let's resume the game here. So let's zoom in a little bit. So now we've got sort of a 1-minute view now. We've gone in deep. All right, I like to have that zoomed out view. I think it gives you a better, bigger picture. But if you want to get into more of like really quick scalps or something like that, maybe you want to zoom in like this. But if you click over here, the right mouse button, boom, you can change this to not come up to where it's just automatic, but this is your protection. And so you say yes, confirm. And there you go. We've made a limit sell order. We've got our target of 15. We've got our stop loss way up here of 30. You can drag those around to change your targets and your stop losses. You can cancel the order if you come in here and click the center mouse button. Cancels out those guys. Of course, you've still made an order, so you have an active order going here. So if you want to finish that, just hit flatten, and you'll see this little triangle comes up to tell you that your order is finished. Likewise, if you want to buy, you come over here and click the left mouse button. Oops, got to change the size to 1. Click the left mouse button. We'll confirm it. Same situation. If you wanted to have 2 different targets, click that mouse button twice. And now you've got 2 different targets that you can play with. Like I said, you can remove that confirmation window, and that's how I trade. I don't have that confirmation window up. So if I click in here, I've got to be very careful not to do it with an accident. If I click in here, it's going to execute the order immediately. And then you saw that I was struggling a little bit when I was trying to buy or sell over there. Let's flatten this out. I had to keep coming back and adding 1 contract. Well, that's what this little pin is for. So if you put it in at 1, you click this little pin, and now it has saved your settings. So if I click over here, 1, guess not. So it's that damn confirmation thing keeps wiping out my size. Let's try that one more time. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this little, yeah. Learn something new every day. So this little box right here, I apparently had unclicked that long ago and forgot what it did. This little box resets your orders to 0 every time you click. That's what the frustrating part was. So let's flatten that out. Get those all out of there. So we got rid of that box. So now you know what that box does. It resets, automatically set order back to 0. Okay, so that is the buy and the sell options. You can get into more detail if you click shift buy. Now you've got a limit order sitting there, and so it's not going to execute until you get up to there. So that's how you put in a limit buy. Likewise, shift right click is going to limit sell. You're not going to sell until it comes down to hit that. We will cancel those out with the middle mouse button. Okay, so let's get into the extra details that come with Global Plus. That is I'm not kidding, that is the only detail of Global Plus that I use, is the ability to trade from Bookmap. And I'll show you why in a minute. Somebody else might disagree with me. I'm sure Bookmap itself would disagree with me. But if we come into these other options, you've got the iceberg detector, okay? The iceberg detector has a couple different options, trying to show you resistance if people are quickly, like within milliseconds, adding to their orders at a certain limit. So if you get to like the price of $23 and then somebody there is, every time they get hit with a market order, they are adding on. That's what the resistance one does. The underflow shows you that it's supposed to show you hidden orders. Like if you come down to an area and it says there's only 50 limit orders here, but then a huge order hits into it and it doesn't move, and then the underflow comes up and shows you something that says, oh, there was 100 hidden orders here because big boys can hide their orders. How fair is that? But that's what the underflow is supposed to show you. Personally, I think this iceberg detector is completely useless, and Bookmap itself kind of agrees, because they came out with, and I do use this one, they came out with an API. It's called MBO data. And so Rhythmic has started providing market by order data, meaning that they are starting to show you where those hidden orders execute. So stop runs, it'll show you stop runs, and I'll show this tool in another video because it's a fantastic tool, but it's too much for this video. And it'll show you the hidden iceberg orders when they execute. They won't show you in advance, only when they execute, but it does it without fail. This iceberg detector is, I don't know what it's reading. It just gives you data all over the place. It's hard to interpret any of the data. None of the numbers seem to matter. So like down here, you would say, well, there was 396 iceberg orders, so maybe that's why we got resistance and it went up. But then you had 417 and it just went down. And like I said, I think this would just do more harm than good. So if you want Global Plus, you don't want it for the iceberg order. The large lot detector is largely the same thing. So it'll give you a little white line. It's kind of hard to see here, but it'll give you little white lines on certain areas to let you know that, so of these orders, of these 56 that are sitting here, the further over that white line is, the more that is one big lot versus like a bunch of small one lots, you know, a bunch of retail traders to say, hey, there's just one big guy here. I've tried to use that to my advantage. I'm not smart enough to do it. So I wouldn't buy it for that either. It's a large lot tracker because it just doesn't seem to give me, this is me personally, it doesn't seem to give me an edge to know whether that lot is a bunch of small traders or one big trader. It seems to work out the same either way for my strategy. Large trades alert, largely the same thing. Large trades alert will give you a, yeah, if you can hear it in the background, you can set it to a minimum size, so it will have this little robot voice tell you that, hey, an order of 50 contracts just happened. Okay, so if you want to set that just to track big orders, you can do that, and it'll come up with annoying robot voice and tell you, I don't need to know that, so I don't use it. I think the volume dots do a great job of that, so I think it's redundant. Order book and balance. Volume and balance, these are trying to show you sort of, I don't know, this is another tool that I think is useless. I know that I've definitely seen some Bookmap traders use these tools, so take it with a grain of salt. But Bookmap already shows you the highlight, like, you know, there's a bunch of sellers up here, right? You know that there's highlighted sellers, and you know that there's not much highlighted buyers. So why would I need this little meter to tell me that there are more highlighted buyers or more highlighted sellers? Likewise with the volume and the dots. Another redundant tool that I just don't think you need. None of these tools, I guarantee you, are worth the extra money for Global Plus other than trading directly from Bookmap. And I really like that. I really like the ability to do that. And for me, it was worth it. If you have another execution platform that you like, just use that execution platform instead, okay? And save yourself the $1,000. But that is pretty much it. We're not going to get into a bunch of strategies today. I wanted to show you the nitty-gritty bells and whistles, all right? And I just need to emphasize at the end of this, absolutely love this tool. Wouldn't trade without it. it's just made me such a better and more informed trader. Okay, and it can do the same for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. It's been a fun one, boys. I'm out.